Good evening. I know some of you have only seen or heard my words. You've never seen the body. And might be somewhat of a shock to you. Find out it comes out of a body. You thought it came out of a tape recorder. Well, here we are again and again and again and again. Some of us here have been checking in with each other since the late 60s. And for some people here, this is our first time in the physical bodies to be together. But yet there is something incredibly familiar about all this. And it's hard to figure out how it could be so familiar when it is not really, we don't know each other particularly in this incarnational history. And I suspect that the books and the tapes and you and I are familiar to one another because we talk to a place in ourselves where we are alike rather than different. There is so much emphasis in the culture on how we're different from one another, how we're special, and that really the rest of it, the way in which we're not special, in which there is a common, whatever you want to call it, humanity, divinity, whatever it is, gets a little lost in the shuffle. And when we speak to that place in ourselves, it's a place that very often doesn't get exercised very much. It's a place where we feel at home together. Feels familiar and warm and comfortable, like an old slipper. I experience it as a place of the heart, and less so a place of the mind. It feels to me like our minds are so much the instruments of our separateness that we think our way into little boxes. It is said that the intellectual who is proud of his intellect is like the prisoner who's proud of his cell. Now, in no way do I want to negate intellect or put it down. It has a beautiful place in this rhythm and scheme of things. But it does us a disservice when it takes over our lives. It's like having a robot that starts to run you. And often what it does is it veils our hearts. Our hearts have this incredibly soft, warm, that experience, my heart goes out to you. My heart, I feel the fullness, my heart. When I feel your suffering, my heart hurts. The heart is such a merging instrument. It is so much something that brings us together through the heart. The heart goes out. When you fall in love, you open to the universe. There's a kind of a merging, a flowing together quality. The mind is always afraid the heart's going to give away the store. The heart's always saying, take the keys, take the house, take what you need. Here's some more. I remember meeting a Tibetan Lama once, a fellow named Geshe Wangyal in New Jersey. That's a place in the Himalayas. And he was in the industrial wastelands of New Jersey, not in the beautiful sections of New Jersey, but really out among all the industrial sites. And he had a little kind of plastic stucco house. And I came to see him, and he was this beautiful Lama, just beautiful. And he was so open and so sweet and so loving, and they were so poor, and they were building a little temple there, and I was on the way from one of our big houses to another big house. We were moving to Millbrook, New York, and we had I had a Land Rover with a trailer full of furniture. And I thought, we're so rich and they're so poor. And my heart was so open. I opened the back of the trailer and I said, can you use this? How about this? And everything we said yes until the trailer was empty. And it was old. It was lamps and rugs and... In fact, my bedroom rug became the temple rug, which was strange because what I had done on that rug. And every time I went into that temple, I thought, oh, you know... And I gave it all away, and then I just loved him so much, and they were so poor that I took my checkbook and I wrote out a check for roughly everything in my account, and I handed it to him. And I drove away, and my mind said, okay, are you out of your mind? Which is exactly what I was. See, I was out of my mind. I was in my heart for change. Our hearts have a hard time staying open, though, because there's not just one Lama in Freehold, New Jersey. I mean, in each of our lives, we come across so much suffering. And you couldn't, could you, keep your heart open all the time? You'd give away everything, and then you'd be suffering too. See, I'm in a funny predicament, and I must share it with you. I don't know quite how to do it, but see if I can express it to you. Most of the spiritual blessings I started to receive, other than the great ones I received from my parents and from my life experiences, but one of the turning points in my life was meeting my spiritual teacher in India. It's hard to describe what he did to me or for me other than, well, let's see. Let me give you a little feeling for it. Okay, a quick story. That I've told many times. I'm in my Volkswagen microbus in India, old second-hand bus, and there are maybe 12, 13 friends in it with me. And we have gone to a little temple to make a pilgrimage because my teacher said he wouldn't see us until the afternoon, Guru. On the way back, the Volkswagen won't go up the hill because it's only running on 3 cylinders. It's got too many people in it. So I say, everybody get out and push. So everybody gets out but 2 women who were sitting in the back. And they're talking and they ignore me. So I'm getting a little bugged with them. We're pushing up the hill with these 2 women talking in the back. I'm thinking to myself, they should have gotten out and pushed. This isn't very kind. But I don't say anything because I'm a gentleman. And we get back in the car, and we go back to the temple, and we go into the temple, and my guru is sitting across the temple, and as we're walking towards him, he's yelling at us. Ram Das is angry, Ram Das is angry. Everybody says, no, he's been very nice. No, Ram Dass is angry. The women wouldn't get out and push. Now, he kept doing that to me. I mean, once I went to Delhi when they first let me out of the temple after I went there in '67. And I went to Delhi to get my visa extended, and by then I was a real yogi. I had a long beard and long hair, and I was wearing a dress, and I had beads, and I was very holy. And I had been fasting, and light was pouring out of my head, and I was really out there, you know. I mean, I was a spiritual materialist delight. And I got hungry in Delhi, and I decided to go to a vegetarian restaurant, and I went in there to eat what was proper for yogis. And Indians treat yogis with great respect, and so they were very respectful of me, especially a Westerner, doing this. And they gave me a table, a nice table, and they brought special foods, and they were all pranaming to me, you know, because they were very honored that a yogi had the money to come into the restaurant in the first place. So at the end, they served me sherbet with 2 little cookies in it. And I knew the cookies weren't yogi food. I just knew they were English biscuits with sugar and stuff. But I really wanted them. And I was afraid they'd be looking at me. You know, they were watching to see what the Western yogi did. So I sort of ate them like, you know, I was looking over there, and I'd eat them, you know, and then I got back in the bus and went the 8 hours back to the temple. And when I came in to see my guru, the first thing he said to me was, "How did you like the biscuits?" Okay. Now, he kept doing that until, I just thought, ha, 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 isn't he wonderful, and he's got all these powers. And then one day I was sitting in front of him, and these images came to mind, and I suddenly realized that he knew everything in my head. Oh my God, if he knows that, then he knows, and if he knows that, and it's suddenly all the things you go into the bathroom and close the door to think, he knew. And I couldn't even look at him. I was so embarrassed. It was like you'd just been undone. You've been filleted. And when I finally got the guts up to just look at him out of the corner of my eye, he was looking at me with such love. And I don't think I had ever felt that I could be loved being fully who I was. Because I never met anybody that didn't want something from me. Maybe they just wanted me to be good or to not bug them or whatever. But to meet somebody who didn't want anything from me and who could love me just as I was, so in a way it opened my heart a great deal. Well, that was part of the teachings, and he just touched my heart and guided me with my heart into spirit, into deeper and deeper spirit. Now, he was known in a certain stage. I don't know much about his earlier days. I don't know whether he had gurus or anything about it really, because it's all kind of strange. But for a period of time, nobody knew what his name exactly was. He's just this kind of wandering guy. And he was known for a while as Cracked Pot Baba. And he was somebody who wandered around either naked or with a loincloth in and out of the jungle. And he'd find a broken pot on the ground, because pots are made out of the earth. They're on a wheel, they make them, and then they bake them in the sun. And then when they break, you throw them away, and they go back into the earth. So he'd take a piece of cracked pot, and he'd wear it in his head in the sun. And then when he'd get hungry, he'd beg with it. And that's what he had. That was it. That was his stuff. He had a cracked pot. Well, just the other day, MasterCard sent me my new MasterCard, and it's gold. And here I am, I'm in training, you see. My teacher, who I would like nothing better than to be, he had a cracked pot, and I have a gold MasterCard, see. I'm trying to put it all together. I mean, I'm not giving you a conclusion, I'm just giving you an interesting perplexity to me. The other day I spoke in somewhere, and speak every other night. So, and it was somewhere. And at the end of the lecture, somebody walked up. He was a man. He looked a little bit like what you might call a street person. He was in his 50s. He had baggy trousers on and looked unshaven, and he walked up to me after the lecture in a very friendly and familiar sense. He said, you're doing fine, but it would really help if you gave away your credit cards. And then he walked away. Who was he? What am I to do about that? Gandhi was pulling out of a railway station on a train, and a reporter rushed up to him and said, Mahatmaji, give us a message to take back to our people. And Gandhi just had time to scribble on a paper bag, and he tore it off and he handed it out the window. And it said, my life is my message. Now, I have had, as most of you have had, experiences where you have had a direct sense of the unity of all things. You've had a sense of the family, the nature of the family of humanity, the family of species, of all species. And you've looked out, there are places in your consciousness that you have touched where you have looked and you have seen that we are all sisters and brothers. We're all one family. And when you feel that, you feel this incredible openness and love. That the heart knows. The heart doesn't make discriminations of you're this and you're that. It just sees family everywhere it looks. But my mind, when I'm in my mind discriminates between me and them. Or us, if you want to talk about my biological family and them, or us, my particular community of family and them. And what I will do for us is different than what I do for them. I have a hard time with that, because it's as if the way I am on one plane negates what I know from another plane. In Islam they say, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. It's like we're all one, but it's my television set. Now, you are in the good guy mailing list just like I am. And you know each day, each week, there's all those letters. You get on one list and you had it. And then what is it each week? You sit with your checkbook. Some of you. Some of us. Me. I sit with my checkbook. And is it going to be what's it going to be this week? Is it going to be the people that are starving in Africa? Is it going to be the blind in Nepal? Is it going to be the battered women? Is it going to be the abused children? Is it going to be the seals who are being killed for their coats? Is it going to be the woods that are being destroyed by acid rain? Is it going to be the fight against the Ku Klux Klan? Is it going to be who's suffering the most? Is it probably I'll get a letter from Donald Reagan soon. You never know. I mean, probably be help my friend Don Reagan. It'll be signed by Ed Meese. You know. Because there is a lot of suffering. There's an awful lot of suffering. Let alone walking down the street or driving through and seeing homeless people and seeing hungry people. And seeing people that are the objects of violence and looking at the evening news and reading the newspaper of rapes and murders and paranoia and rip-offs and ugliness and harshness. And sometimes the world seems a very inhospitable place for humanity, and the mind says, well, what I have to do is protect me, my stash, myself. And so you know that money buys privacy, and so you have a little box that you live in, and a little box you drive in, and you lock the doors of the box you're in all the time. And you fill the box with your stuff. It's my stuff. The other night I was in Richmond, Virginia, and I had to take a little plane to get to Richmond from Baltimore. And I use carry-on luggage because it's like playing Russian roulette when you use the baggage claim system. So I was carrying on my bags, but they wouldn't let me take it on this little plane. And they took it away from me and they put it in the hold of the plane. And then they gave me a conflicting instruction, and I went to the wrong place to find my bag, and by the time I realized it wasn't going to be there, the plane had taken off with my bags. And they called ahead, and the plane landed, and they couldn't find my bags. So I found myself in the hotel that night with no bags. Just me in the hotel room. Now, I started to list in my mind what was in the bags that I no longer had. Now, I didn't have my notes, so I wouldn't know what to say. Right? I didn't have my clothes, so I would be looking somewhat disreputable. I only had the clothes on my back. I didn't have my heater to make tea that I had found specially. I didn't have my earplugs. I didn't have my shaving equipment. I didn't have my gout pills. That was going to be a problem. I'd probably have gout within a week. One by one, I started to see all the things that I thought I needed to have. My little box of stuff that I carried with me like a turtle over my back down these long, infinitely long corridors at the airport, like a pack animal, carrying my stuff. This is my stuff. Sorry, I'll carry my stuff, thank you. Don't worry, it's all right, it's just my stuff. And I realized that the only thing finally I missed, I could replace all of it. I could call my doctor and get some more gout pills. But what I was missing was my address book and my calendar. Well, the address book, a lot of friends would go back into the void. But that happens anyway. The ones you see, and the ones you don't, you'll remember fondly. But the calendar was interesting, because that was the future. I had just lost the future. Okay? It's one thing to lose the past, it's another thing to lose the future. I wouldn't know what to do next. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? I trusted that calendar. It tells me what to do every day. I don't have any copies of it. May 1st, I'm supposed to be in Italy, but I don't remember where. How do I do that? Do I go to Italy and wait? I don't know what to do. Yeah. So at first I felt this incredible anxiety of I'm going to be irresponsible now. I've just blown it. I'm bad. I've lost my identities, my cards of identity. I won't know who I am, what I'm supposed to do. I have my wallet and my credit card, so I can buy it all over again, but there's a great story in the Seattle newspaper. It showed a guy behind bars, and it said this man was found with a dispatch case which was full of identities. The police have ascertained he's none of the identities that are in the dispatch case. Okay? But they can't figure out who he is. And he said to them, ones that arrested me, it's your problem to find out who I am. I know who I am. And the sergeant said, he has boggled the system because he's not somebody. The other one I like is the Nasruddin. Nasruddin was the Sufi rascal, and Nasruddin went into a bank. He was always very disreputable looking. He went into a bank to cash a check, and he handed the check to the teller. The check looked all right. The teller studied it, but Nasruddin didn't. Finally, the teller said, well, the check looks all right, sir, but can you identify yourself? Nasruddin reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out a mirror, and he said, yup, that's me. Well, in that particular hotel room in Richmond, I was getting close to being crackpot Baba. I was thinking, why do I need all this stuff? To be a renunciate in America, do I need my Volvo? You know, and my sweaters and all that? I was trying to figure out what the extent I could keep my heart open to the suffering of the world and give away things and go simply and live simply like other people live simply. And how much was the fear going to cause me to build my little box of stuff and protect my stuff? I collected for years stuff you never throw away. Important memorabilia. You probably don't do it, but, you know, old pictures, things you're not wearing anymore, but you might someday want to wear later. You know, the wide ties, they may come back into style. You never know. Or old socks where one is sort of missing, but another one may turn up like it. You know, that kind of things you'd never dare part with. Autographed, this isn't that. And I had boxes of them, but I didn't have a home. So I had these boxes, maybe 15 boxes of them. Old psychedelia, things like that. And I would walk through life as a renunciate with a Federal Express truck following me, you know, carrying my life. And I keep moving. I had to rent warehouse space. And I never opened the boxes. That was funny. It was as if I figured I needed them for later when I ran out of life. You know, I mean, my life is so exciting, I don't have time to open those boxes and live out, oh, remember Agatha? I mean, I don't have time for that. This is too rich. This is enough. But apparently, somewhere in my mind is the thought, you're going to run out of this. And you're going to be so happy you have that. Well, I realized the folly of it, because this was getting richer and richer all the time, and it was getting so bizarre because I could sit in an empty room on a mat, and it was enough. In fact, it got cluttered when you put anything else in the room. And there I was, sitting in an empty room with a storehouse full of boxes for later. So I decided to burn them, which is quite a leap. And I had a fire. First of all, I decided to throw it away before I decided to burn it. So I took it and I threw it in the trash. And then in the middle of the night, I thought, oh, I threw away that letter. Oh, I'll never see it again. Oh, I don't want to throw that one away. And I was out there going through in the middle of the night these bags. So I decided I should burn it, so I could not look backward. So I had a fire, and my friends were all helping me burn things. And I'd look at each thing and say goodbye to it and then burn it. And then one rascal brought me all my pictures of my guru. He said, "You ready to throw these in?" I said, "No, not those." And I saw that I still need those, I said. And I saw what my limits were of what I was ready to throw away and what I still needed. So I'm down to about 5 boxes now. Maybe I've gotten rid of 10 boxes. A long way from crackpot Baba. Still having a history, still being somebody carrying my something around with me. Not quite ready to stand naked before the universe and say, here I am. Whatever will happen, will happen. A little frightened still. A little bit where my mind has a place to grab and say, see, it could be bad. You'll be old and lonely. You watch out. Take care of yourself. Protect now. Insurance. I was playing Frisbee in Marin County. I'm just randomly associating tonight. I hope this isn't upsetting to you. I've been giving, I just finished 24 lectures of this 28th series before Christmas, and then I do another 32 after Christmas. And the lectures start to get, certain things work all the time, and pretty soon I'm going through a routine every night. And they're beautiful and charming and delightful, and everybody loves me and I love everybody, but it's not the living edge. And I get greedy to be with you in the living edge. So tonight I'm risking a little more. And not, because you can listen to all that other stuff on tapes. I was in Marin County. This is an old story, though. I was playing Frisbee. Actually, I was naked, because in California you do those kind of things. And I had rolled in clay. We had found a clay bank and rolled in it. And if this is too horrible, you don't have to visualize it, all right? You can just forget that part of the story. I was seeing this old jerk rolled in, naked with clay all over his face and body, running in the sunshine, belly hanging out. Oh, great image. But I was happy, and I was playing Frisbee, and the sun was dazzling, shining on the ocean like it was yesterday here. Beautiful day. I love the ocean. And I was about to throw the Frisbee, and through my mind went the inscription over Gandhi's tomb, which is, think of the poorest person you've ever seen and ask whether your next act will be of any use. Okay. That's the interesting issue of growing up in an affluent culture. Do you throw the Frisbee? Can you look in the eyes of the poorest person and still throw the Frisbee? If you give up throwing Frisbees because it's all too serious, are you fully honoring your unique part in the drama of the universe? Does the drama include Frisbees, or is that too frivolous? How do you decide? What rule book do you use? Well, Frisbees are out, but a nice evening at the opera is acceptable once a year. I mean, is there a rule book? I give away 10% because the IRS says I can. Who sets the rules? Who sets the rules about how much your heart can be open? Who sets the rules about who's us and who's them and how much you give and how much you hold? Who sets those rules? Who sets the rules about how much fun you can have for how serious you are? I've been trying to listen, to hear. I realize that the only way I'm going to know how to act at any moment is learning how to trust my intuitive, what's called the heart-mind, the intuitive heart-mind, not the intellect, but the intuitive heart, because this is not a rational thing. You can't rationally decide because it's too complex a situation for your mind to figure it out. And the people that try to figure it out end up so in their minds and so cut off from the world by making every decision from inside their box, outward. They're always in their mind, and the quality of being in your mind is you're always thinking about everything, so you're always one thought away from where the action is. So there's some way you have to just come back into a kind of an intuitive trust, and it's not very rational. And if you try to explain to somebody why you do this or why you don't do that, you couldn't do it. You just have to say, I just intuit that it's appropriate. I feel in the way of things, in the harmony of things, and that's not reasonable. It's not what serious people's, how they guide their lives. They make rational choices. What's good for my career? Good for you. Good for all of us, optimally. See, for a long time, for about 25 years now, I have been trying very hard to become holy. I've really done, some of you know my life story, and you know that I have really been working at it. Some of you have been sharing the work. We've been really huffing and puffing. We're like the little train that could. I know I can, I know I can, I know I can, I know I can. You know? And we've been absolutely determined to get enlightened. And I used to count how soon it would be. I remember in the 60s, Tim Leary and I had a chart on the wall of how soon everybody would get enlightened. It involved putting acid in the water system, but it was going to be soon, you know. And that turned out to be a little naive. But I began to see that there were real enlightened beings like my spiritual teacher, and I was on a path, and I read the books, and the books showed maps, and if you followed the paths, you get there. And there was a going, and there was a path, and there was a pilgrim, and there was somewhere to go, and I was going. And I did all the things I didn't do them all, but I was doing them. You know, I'd go to meditations where they'd beat me with sticks, and I'd say, boy, this is good. I'm really getting there, you know. And I'd get very high. Oh, would I get high. Light would come out and in, and I'd see auras, and it would all be, ooh, boy, I feel I'm very close. Spiritual materialism is an interesting one. It's very seductive, you know. You go to meditate, and like some of the meditations I do, Southern Buddhist meditation, just following the rising and falling of the muscle in your abdomen. I went to Rangoon 2 years ago, and I just sat in a cell for 2 months meditating from 3 in the morning till 11 at night on the muscle rising and falling in my abdomen. You have 2 meals a day, and you don't see anybody but the teacher for 5 minutes. You don't talk to anybody, you don't read any books, you don't write anything. Well, I cheated. I had one book of 100 poems of Kabir to give me my heart hit, and a picture of my guru. These were cheating. You don't bring them into a monastery. And I had 2 one-pound bags of M&Ms. This is mine. And every day I would allow myself to read one poem, look at the picture for 5 minutes, and have 2 M&Ms out of each bag. Okay? 2 with peanuts and 2 without peanuts. Okay? And the job is to see, you realize that you're creating all the suffering with your own mind. Because your mind keeps creating out of the stuff of the universe, it keeps creating these models of reality in which you're usually losing. You know, it's always just not quite right. Did you ever notice that? It's always just a little off, you know. And it's your mind that creates it. I mean, you're handed everything and you say, well, it's wonderful if only, see that one, it's the mind. So the game is to loosen the hold of all these structures in your mind that keep telling you how miserable you are, and how horrible it all is, and how much fear you should have, and just quiet down. And you learn, and one of the ways to quiet is to follow take any object and stick with it. And every time your mind wanders, you bring it back. Very gently, don't get violent, just gently. So you're following your breath, rising, falling. Rising, falling. Rising, falling. Rising, falling. Then the thought comes, it'll never work. See? Now that's a thought. Now what you're used to doing is when thoughts come, you treat them as real, because each thought says, hey, psst, I'm the real thing. And when you say it's never worked, you're supposed to get up and say, you're right, it'll never work, and you go to the teacher and say, thank you very much, but I'm leaving Rangoon, But you learn it's just another thought. So you say, thanks, fella, be comfortable, blessings, and you go back to rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling. My knee hurts. It's another one. It's a real pain. I mean, I can't just treat that like a thought, The knee won't fall off. Don't worry. You're just going to meditate for another 40 minutes. Then you can move the knee. Just let it hurt. Come on, just go back to your breath. You made a deal. You'll stick with your breath. All right. Rising, falling. Rising, falling. You think it's time for lunch yet? See how all those little things grab you, and then I'm really tired. I don't think I can meditate anymore. That's a good one. The one that really gets you is rising, falling, rising, falling. I think something's happening. That's the one. Yes, I think something's happening. I just felt a thing in my spine, and there's a light, and wow, I better tell somebody. It's great. It's great. You go to the teacher and you say, and it's a very formal method. You bow and you say, I wish to report on my meditations. I have been following the rising and falling of my breath, which he knows since he told you to do it all day. But you say it, and you say, I note rising as rising. I note falling as falling. The rising has a quality, and then you describe the quality of floating. The falling has a quality of thickness. I want to report on a session at 6 p.m. last night. After 2 minutes, I became aware of the sound of a bird. I noted it as listening. The teacher says, did you hear the bird on the rising or the falling breath? I didn't notice. Please do better. And then as you're leaving, did you awaken this morning on a rising breath or a falling breath? I didn't notice. You'll do better. So you start from the minute you wake up, just rising, falling, and you do it until finally there is just the breath. It's quite extraordinary what happens. I won't go into it because that's the advanced course, but, But at any rate, the spiritual materialism would get me all the time. And I kept pushing away my humanity in order to embrace my divinity. And along the way, I got a lot of clues that maybe I was on the wrong path, but I couldn't hear it because I was getting a lot of support from my fellow renunciates because they were giving up everything. And look at my guru who only had a cracked pot. But see, he wasn't giving up a credit card to have a cracked pot. All he had was a cracked pot. That's all he seemed to want was a cracked pot. Like Ramana Maharshi, the great Indian saint, he said, I didn't eat. They said I was fasting. I kept trying to go into the subtler and subtler planes. The planes where it was close to the edge of form and formless. One night I was at a Benedictine monastery with Alan Watts, who was an old rascally friend of mine, and we had been partaking of the altar wine, And it was about 2 in the morning in his room,